All right, welcome to another episode of Comic Book Squares. This is going to be a good one. This is, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this right, Seidr. And my name's Shane.
I'm Paul.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike. Let's get this show started.
All right, well, this is going to be a good one because this is actually a book that an artist sent us. All of the previous books that we've talked about have been books that Paul has gone to the store and looked through, and he's kind of our guru for selecting material. So this is going to be a little different, as an artist sent us specifically for us to review. And we've talked about this before we started recording, that we're going to be as honest as we normally are with our reviews. Even though an artist sent it to us specifically to talk about, we're just going to be ourselves. So with that said, Ben, since you talked to them before they sent us the book, why don't you tell us a little bit about the author and the publishing company?
Thanks for asking, Shane. And so it's the book is we've been discussing this offline, but it's we think it's either Seidr or Seidr, Seidr. It's a Viking tale that is based in some Viking mythology. You can see that at play here and stuff. It comes from Revelation Comics, which is part of Wicked Publishing, Wikid. Your creator and writer is Michael Nunley. And the co-creator and the artist on it, and I hope I pronounced this correctly, is Tosin Awasika. Your letterer is Guido Martinez, and Russ Perezek is the editor. So these are, again, we're talking about indie comics and stuff. So these are folks. I haven't got a chance to dig into any of those folks' previous work, but I know that they're probably still relatively new. They hit us. They hit us up to review it. I saw they had a few other reviews already out there, but we're excited to dig in and take a look at this book.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, what'd you think of it?
I really liked it. I'm kind of a sucker for the old Viking Norse mythology thing. I enjoy Marvel's store. I enjoy anything independent of that. There's Norse mythology titled book out through Dark Horse right now. Walt Simonson, of Marvel, fame and other things. He's got his own series that he's done for IDW Comics called Ragnarok. This is just sort of another line of books like that I really got into. I thought it was really interesting. Obviously, it's got a good backstory. I mean, he goes into, kind of setting the stage, here's the year it happened, here's the cities, here's what's going on, which I really like. Typically, a lot of stories like this don't require a lot of setup or any backstory, but I mean, just a real quick paragraph to just kind of get you in the mood. And again, it's 32 pages of a really good original story, I thought.
Yeah. I'll jump in. I liked that too. It was something original. That's why I was excited to review this when they sent it to us, because yes, we've seen Viking tales and stuff before, but I don't know. This is one thing that I love about the indie comics industry and everything that we're doing, and that we get to do in reading all these, is all these different original stories. So digging in, I was like, okay, what's going to be happening? Is it going to be another fight with the gods and stuff? But it's cool because in this first issue, it's a big issue, right? 32 pages, as Paul said. It's not all just world building, right? They do that like really quick and then get into this story about, the Viking, looting and pillaging, and then how they kind of screw up some stuff with one of the gods, and then things just kind of get crazy from there. And I don't know, it was an original story. It felt more personal because you're following the one main character, the king of these Vikings, and what he did and how his decisions kind of affect his whole all of his people, and one guy in particular. So yeah, it was fun. It didn't feel like too grandiose with gods coming down and like lightning bolts or whatever. It felt like a kind of a cool personal story. So I like that.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to jump in here, Mike, if you don't mind. I mean, I'll be honest. Viking stuff is probably not my favorite of genres. Like I know there's a lot of shows on TV now about Vikings and all that kind of stuff. Um, as I was reading through it, there's definitely a lot of kind of Nordic words, and they make a comment at the end that they wanted to be authentic to that, and that's why they kept those as their spellings and the way they are. And maybe I'm just not that bright, but there are a lot of combination of letters that I was like, okay, it's Ista, I guess that's close enough. I'm going to get. Sometimes when I'm reading through that, just pulls me out for a second from the book. And that's just what it is. I mean, that's the way they were spelled back then, and that's on me for not being intelligent enough to get the proper pronunciation in my own head as I'm reading through it.
You didn't have your Nordic dictionary on hand?
I did not have the Nordic dictionary handy. I should have while I was reading through this. So with all of that said, the other thing for me is the entire story is told as something that already happened. So for me, that feels like it takes away a lot of energy from the story, because you already know the characters that are telling the story. We know nothing's going to happen to them. So there's no sense of endangerment as you're listening to it, because it's just a tale being told, essentially. There were some interesting twists that happen in that are setting some stuff up for obviously future issues. The other thing that for me anyways is that essentially the people that are telling the story, they're not the greatest of people anyways. What they're going to do to that town, so I didn't have like a ton of sympathy for them. Like I was like, they're kind of the bad guys. I mean, really, so all of those things take me out a little bit from it. Artistically, it's definitely they're just kind of rectangle square panels. There's not a lot of variety or using the art form in a way to show energy or movement. It's kind of just almost like a series of storyboards. And so, those kind of things were sort of negatives for me. But I don't know. What did you think, Mike?
Well, definitely taking into consideration everything that you all have said, I can definitely see those vantage points as ringing true. Me personally, again, when you look at a personal take on anything that you're kind of invited to and enjoying, mythology's always been one of those things that I love to read about, and sometimes I think people do try to stay very true to the interpretations that we know of historically, and then sometimes people take it on a little bit of a different spin, which I'm absolutely a-okay with. That's always again what intrigues me sometimes to these different stories about mythology, because you've got a lot of interesting characters. In this case, you've got almost like a frontline version. Again, there was previously mentioned, there's not gods coming down and having God versus God fights and all this stuff and manipulating people. It was basically kind of a front line. Hey, this is about the people, and then perhaps some of the gods that they either worship or believe in or whatever, and how there was actually an interaction at some level, bringing a little bit of that supernatural piece to it, which again, it's not everybody's favorite or cup of tea as far as the story to be told, but it was definitely entertaining. I think it was solid. Definitely, again, some of the points that were brought up about the story and the artwork and things like that are definitely, we'll see when we get to the reviews, what people really think of it as far as a grading scale. But, solid book, solid story. Whether or not, again, you take some of that as an original piece or a little bit of original spin, that's, that to me didn't take much away at all from the story. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah. Hearing some of the stuff you were saying, Shane, helped me, it kind of made me think a little bit more about and then Mike, one of both you were talking about like the flashback. I think it was you, Shane, talking about how it's kind of all told as a
Mm.
flashback, if you will. Yeah, I could see that. Like, I wonder how this story would have played out and how we would have felt about it if it was told linearly, right? With more instead of narration boxes, more word bubbles and stuff like that as they're having conversations and as they're doing that. I wonder if they made this choice to quickly get through the backstory because the rest of the series is going to be more about this, the aftermath of the scorning of the gods or the god. So maybe that's why they're telling it kind of flashback, like this is what happened, and now because of this we're screwed dealing with the repercussions. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just taking a step back from it after I read it, I just ask myself the question, what did you gain from telling it as a flashback as opposed to just telling it right off the bat as the story? And I don't know that you gain anything or that it makes it a better story by telling it in a flashback. I almost feel like it would have been more interesting to just start off with them in the boat's heading and what they were about to do, and then end with that same scene where, and I think that would have been far more interesting because you would have known what happened, and then you would have been part of the decision making that happens at the very end of the story.
Right,
you would have been part of the audience that makes a decision based on the information that you saw happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, artistically, that's just a choice I would have made. I would have looked at it and said, and there wouldn't have been that much really tweaking that had to be done, visually or even storytelling wise, because once they get into it, there's some couple of captions in the top of the panels that say, "Oh, this is what happened here," but you could have easily done that through a piece of dialogue, or
Right.
just change up the caption. So that just my thought on it. Character design wise, I thought it was interesting that they gave some differentiation between the characters. That I could easily see who they were, even though in those Nordic outfits, it'd be very easy to have them look very similar. So they gave some differentiation between those. So I thought that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Paul. I don't know, Paul. You feel? It sounds like you. The Viking stuff is kind of more in your wheelhouse. You enjoy that. I mean, what did you think about the idea of telling it as a story that already happened, essentially a retelling?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in terms of the story construction. I think you could have just told it as a story straight out. Maybe subsequent issues will explain why it needed to be told the way they did. The one thing that did pull me out of the story though was some of the panels, and obviously we're all lovers of the art form. Some panels seemed really, really well detailed, and others seemed like they were rushed through. One thing that I noticed is sort of as the book progressed, and I don't know if maybe this was a time issue or by design, but some of the later panels, especially during some of the battles, there was no background.
Oh yeah.
Like it was just a wash of color. And sometimes that's by design, but if it's panel after panel and all you're showing is the characters fighting and there's no background, I just, I don't know. I think especially if, you have the chance to create something and you're not up against the timeline of the mighty machine of the big two, you're not on every 30-day schedule. You can definitely make your own decision on how much detail to put or to not put. And so that was one thing as when I used to draw that I struggled with is what do I put in the background? How do I do it? How much detail should it have? And that's a tough thing. So again, maybe it was by design, but in some instances, especially after the, I don't want to ruin anything. I know they're still working on the Kickstarter and this and that, but in terms of sort of the witch possession at one point, right, where she sends out, different people, and they start, creating, havoc and there's battles. There's like no background there in a lot of those panels, and I was confused by that. That's a really dramatic portion of the story, and so my thought is you want to really build those panels up as robust, as colorful, and as detailed as you could, and they kind of went the other way, which again. maybe it was by design, but my preference is to see a little more detail in those types of panels.
Yeah. Yeah, while I had fun with the story, there was some things with the artwork that okay, so I enjoyed, like, and this was brought up earlier, that you're able to differentiate all the characters, and that's usually an issue for me. Maybe it's because in my older age, like, just all you kids look the same to me. I don't know.
Old
All
man
kids.
yells at
Get
cloud.
off the lawn, you Norse
Yes,
punks.
no, I don't know. But so I like to be able to differentiate, and I think they do a really good job of that. Like whether it's the hairstyle or some other,
Yeah.
jewelry or whatever they're wearing, you can tell each person apart. But there was, and again, it might be a choice. Maybe it's they're going with some older art style to try to
Mm-hmm.
stick with the theme of the story. But there was like this in certain panels a lack of detail that stood out, that actually was a little
Yeah.
taking you out of the moment and taking you out of the scene. When it's, we've seen it in other comics and stuff where, especially like in some action scenes, you're supposed to be looking at the person doing the
Right.
action. So
Yeah.
yeah, they might blur it out or do some other effect in the background, so you don't have that much there because it's all about the character.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were some moments in reading this where I was taken out a little bit by like, whoa. I mean, it was just a little extra, on the
Yeah.
lack of detail in some parts.
Yeah.
So I agree with you
I
there.
hear you. Yeah. Well, I think we've definitely got some differing opinions about this particular book, which is fine. I mean, that's the whole thing about art. Some art's gonna come at you more on a personal level, and you're going to enjoy it, and that's your kind of thing. And some just isn't going to resonate, and that's all good. I mean, that's all part of it. So
Yeah.
I think with that, we should probably move into the review section.
All right.
All right. So, I, all right,
You start, Shane.
I'll kick it. Yes, I'll kick it. I'm doing the Ben Squirm on this one, because I feel bad because they gave us this to review, and 100%, they put in a ton of work. I understand that. You're this is your passion, and you put in hours after your normal job and doing the artwork and the story and everything. But just only talking about it from me personally, it's hard for me to root for essentially the villains. And that's just the way my brain works. And when they were talking about, going into this village and like, taking advantage of these, poor people, I was like, well, you guys are kind of assholes. And so that pulls me away and makes me not quite enjoy it as much. And plus Viking stuff really just isn't my bag. So story wise, I'm at a 2.5, and then art, I'm also at a 2.5. So just a 2.5 kind of overall. And that's not a super negative. I mean, I appreciate, what they did. And I think that's a middle of the road, review, but I hope the people that sent us the book understand where I'm coming from and can appreciate, and respect what I'm doing, because I have 100% respect for what they did as well. So,
And as we said on past episodes, like 3 is average, right? I mean, it's to get the
mm-hmm.
4s and the 5s and all that. It's like you got to be, blown away
Yep.
by certain things. So 2.5 is, it's right there. So
Yeah.
Yep.
What'd you think, Ben?
Okay, so with story, like I had fun with the story. I do like, Viking stuff. I mean, the first Viking movie I ever saw was Eric the Viking from Terry Gilliam and those guys. Which, like, it was, because it's funny you say that they're the bad guys, because that's the whole point of Eric the Viking, is an existential crisis about being the villains and stuff. But no, so I enjoy these kind of stories. I do wish, and I enjoyed this one. I did. As we've been talking, I have more and more realized I do wish that it would have maybe been told linearly. That would have added some drama and some other elements to it that would have been more intriguing than reading this guy's backstory, right? Kind of setting it up. So, so for me, I'm going to give that a 3 on the story, because again, I like the story. Just it was, I think, hopefully in issues moving forward, it's going to be, telling the story in real time as it's moving forward. With the artwork, I did feel like it did capture, and that's why I'm giving credit to the artist. But it's like they're trying to capture that feeling of like old Viking tales and like the artwork and stuff you might see on the, the carvings and all that they, that you've seen uh, you know old Viking stuff. But so I did feel like they were trying to capture that. As we said earlier in the show, there were some missed opportunities for maybe a little more added detail to bring us further into the story, and into what's going on, in this place. So I'm gonna give that a 2.5. I feel like there were some missed opportunities with the art. I really wish it could have. I'm hoping as they move forward, they stick with, well, I mean, the colorist, did really great. The letter was great and all that. I was just more what I'm talking about is like backgrounds and stuff like that. So, so overall, I'll still give it an overall 3 for me, solid 3, though, which is, again, as we said, is average score for that.
Mm-hmm. What'd you think, Paul?
Yeah, really to basically reiterate what we've already talked about. The story was somewhat original, but had sort of a unorthodox pattern to it. Didn't necessarily take me out of the story, but just, wasn't really anything that I hadn't seen before. And I'm kind of like you, Shane. I've always got kind of like the white cowboy hat and the white cape on. I find it hard to root for the bad guys. I'm kind of like, if they get what's coming to them, kind of like, yeah, good for you. You deserve it, I mean, it was, and if that's their intention, right? There's no sympathy or empathy on the part of those characters. That's great. So in terms of the story, I'm going to give it a 3. In terms of the art, like I mentioned before, I thought it was a really admirable, ambitious attempt at sort of probably what's supposed to be a large scale sort of epic story. Unfortunately, I thought some of the panels, like I'd mentioned before, were really, really well drawn, detailed, and laid out. And then others seemed to sort of go formulaic or kind of lose steam or detail. And I think, depending on where your story is, if you're, kind of like a crescendo, when you're hitting like a battle scene, you expect to see a little more detail there and a little more, maybe a little more exciting layout, less of the in the box, sort of just panel to panel to panel. That almost feels like a Sunday comic type of format. So with that, I'm going to give the art a 2.5. And so, overall, basically a 3 for an overall rating.
All right, Mike, bring it home.
Well, it looks like I'm wrapping it up. And so I'll keep mine very actually brief because everything that you all, my words, again, are just echoing what has already been said. And my scores, you will see here in a second, my scores are very similar as well. Story, I'm giving a 3. Art, I'm giving a 2.5 with an overall of a 3. Solid book. Improvements can always be made. This type of story, definitely they did a great job as far as detailing the steps along what happens, sometimes in these mythological, supernatural type of spins. So for me, overall of a 3.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're right. We're all right in line. We felt pretty similar, I feel like. So yeah. I mean, I appreciate the artist, for sending that in and giving us the chance to read it over. So I give them 100% respect for that and the work that they've done. So,
absolutely.
If you're into the Viking genre, this definitely might be the jam for you. So yeah, we'll be curious to see what they do moving forward.
Yeah, I would like to say, don't, based on our review, if you like Viking stories, if you're, into some of the supernatural and mythology and all that stuff, check this book out. Our scores are based on our personal opinions, but I would recommend, checking it out and seeing, what you feel about it.
100%. Yeah. Same.
Absolutely.
Echo that. So real quick, before we wrap this up, we kind of missed the ball on this. The actual pronunciation of the title is Seidr. It's mentioned in the Kickstarter, and that's on our bad for not picking that up. But yeah, hopefully that doesn't distract from your enjoyment of the book. All right. Well, that was another interesting one. It was really great to see. This is our first time having an artist send in their book for us to review. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Make sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell It helps us to continue to bring this kind of content to you and interesting stuff that you might not see all the time. So we'll see you on the next one.